When I was growing up, I moved from home to home quite often, so I had quite a few mothers or mother figures in my life. Some of these mother figures had a few things in common, though. For instance, my first mother was my grandmother from age 2 to 5. I would come to the dinner table, sit down, and she would say, "Tara Lee." She was the only person who ever called me Tara Lee. That's how she said my name. The first name and middle name run together. Tara Lee. "Tara Lee, did you wash your hands?" And of course, my grandmother was elderly and not in good health, so I knew I could get away with it. So I always said, "Yes, I washed my hands." Even if I hadn't, I knew she was too tired to really care. So I always said, "Yes, Grandma, I washed my hands." Then my father remarried, and my stepmother was a little bit sharper than my grandmother. I'd come to the dinner table, sit down, and she would raise one eyebrow and glare at me and say, "Terry, did you wash your hands?" I knew better than to lie to her. If I hadn't washed my hands, I just got up from the table and would wash my hands. Then I went to live with my Aunt Millie when I was 10 or 11 years old. Aunt Millie had a son my age named Buster, and we played a lot outdoors, and we worked outdoors. We did chores outside. So when we came to the dinner table, Aunt Millie would look at our hands, and she wouldn't ask us. Aunt Millie would say, "Boys, go wash your hands." She didn't have to ask us if we had. It was very obvious we had not. Washing your hands. It's probably a good thing, and it's nice that moms keep track of things like that. But, you know, I was 50-some years old the last time I had dinner with my parents in a restaurant. We sat down, and my stepmother looked at me and said, "Terry, did you wash your hands?" I raised 4 children by then, and I thought it was pretty absurd that she's still asking this question. Washing hands is probably a good ritual. I want you all to know that before every Eucharist, I wash my hands. Right? Right?
I didn't see it.
You did too. You did too. I made sure that you saw it today. I do. I always wash my hands before the Eucharist. And it's just a matter of good hygiene. It eliminates those germs. It's probably one of the reasons why the Israelites lasted and a lot of other tribes around them didn't. They had this rule that you had to wash things. Their purification rites were all over the place, including washing their hands. They didn't know anything about germs. There was a way before anyone understood anything like that. All they knew was God said you have to wash your hands. So they did. And they survived, probably, because of that good hygiene. The reason why the Pharisees got so upset with Jesus' disciples not washing their hands before they ate was not a matter of good hygiene at all. They didn't understand good hygiene back then. It was all about keeping the law. God had given them the law after they escaped from their bondage in Egypt and were wandering around the wilderness. The laws were what united them. The laws is what made them a special people, the chosen people of God, different from all of their neighbors. It was their uniqueness. It was their identity. But obeying the laws was complicated. In many cases, the laws did give very clear instructions on the way to do certain things. But in other cases, the law will provide some grand moral principle that was always open to interpretation. Okay, so in the Old Testament alone, we find at least 613 laws. It's a lot of laws. But add to that the vague ones that are based on some vague moral principle. The scholars, or the scribes, usually spoken of in the Bible, the scribes developed thousands of extra laws to make sure that you didn't break any of these vague moral principles that were also in there. Thousands upon thousands of laws. Fences around the original law and the original law itself. These rules are the tradition of the elders that we heard about in this morning's gospel. And one of these laws, one of these rules, had to do with washing hands. As I said, it wasn't a bad rule. Good hygiene is a good thing. But beyond that, one of the gifts of the Jewish tradition is the idea of the sanctification of time. How to make daily routines, like preparing a meal, like eating a meal, like doing the dishes after the meal. Ways to make those daily routines into a sacred act. And it usually involves some kind of ritual, like washing your hands or saying a prayer before you eat. And those rituals can transform a routine meal into a holy moment in time. There's some problems with all these rules, all these little fences built up around the law. First of all, there's just too many rules. To follow them all literally could easily take up so much of your thought, so much of your energy, so much of your time, that you could forget the reason you're even following the law. If the rules became the primary concern, then it's really easy to leave God out of the picture, let alone leaving your neighbor out of the picture. And over time, another problem developed. If you broke any of these rules, some people considered you no longer worthy to be part of their community. If you ate unclean food, then you became an unclean person. You became less than human. You became an outcast. You became an untouchable. You were one to be shunned. This is an idea that Jesus spoke out against over and over and over again. Jesus taught that you are not made unclean by breaking one of the rules. You are not made unclean by touching a sick person to heal them. You are not made unclean by who your parents happen to be. You are not made unclean by eating the wrong food, and you're not made unclean by not washing your hands. As Jesus put it, nothing outside a person that by going in could defile, but the things that come out are what defile. So that's the good news in this morning's gospel. The good news is that the kingdom of God that Jesus proclaims, in that kingdom, no one is going to be considered beyond redemption, even if you didn't wash your hands. We do not reject anyone because they have not followed one of the rules. We don't reject anyone because they are somehow identified by some of the community as being unclean. No one gets written off. No one gets left behind. That's the kingdom of God. And that is good news. So we have to be careful about this rule thing. Sometimes our rules are not necessarily God's rules, even though we think they are. You might recall the story of the fiddler on the roof, in which the father is so adamant about the importance of what? Tradition! Tradition! Over and over and over again. He's so adamant about the importance of tradition that he turns his back on the love of his daughter because she married a Gentile. That story has a sad ending, doesn't it? Now, as a good Anglican, as a good Episcopalian, I'm all for good ritual. You ask those who serve with me, I'm actually a bit obsessive-compulsive around the altar. I do like ritual, and I strive to follow all the rules, all the rubrics found in the Book of Common Prayer. But our ritual and our rules are intended to draw us closer to God. Because without God, they're just empty gestures and worthless words. You see, in the end, it's not about rules. I'm going to give you a quote from St. Augustine. And I want to point out that St. Augustine was a quite conservative theologian. Okay, this isn't a quote from some West Coast leftist. All right? This is a really conservative guy. Here's what he said. Love God and then do as you will. Think about that. Love God and then do as you will. If our heart is in the right place, we are set free to do as we will. If we have given our heart to God, we're not going to break any of the rules that really matter to God anyway. If our relationship with God is healthy, everything we do, everything we say, everything that comes from us will be a living witness to God and the way God has transformed our lives. So wash your hands. It's a good ritual. And besides that, it'll make your mothers smile. But may we keep focused on letting the new light of Christ, which has been enkindled within our hearts, shine forth in our lives.